Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's weekly check-in for Content Forum. Happy that you could join us. And I see folks signing in as we speak. So I'm really excited to welcome to the weekly check-in today, Nancy Green and Teri Anderson from ASIS International. Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks for joining us. We're really excited to talk to you about the content strategy efforts that you guys have underway. I remember seeing the article in Executive Update or Associations Now. Sorry. Nancy knows I'm reverting back to the old days in my brain. And I also wasn't able to attend ASE annual this year, but I followed your session on Twitter, and I'm really excited that you're available and agreed to answer questions from us today and talk about what's been going on there. So thanks again for doing that.
Absolutely. So glad to be here.
Thanks. So I want to jump right in, Teri, and ask you, a lot of content strategy efforts start because there's some problem identified. So could you describe for us either the problem or the issues that ASIS International was having that they thought content strategy could help with?
Absolutely. Well, for many, many years, content was siloed all over the organization. So the magazine produced content, our professional volunteers produced content on their own through councils. We had live educational programs, S&Gs, standards and guidelines, books, webinars. So things were happening all around us, but there was no strategy and no alignment. So all these groups acted independently and none of them were acting strategically. So we needed a cohesive strategy to reflect not only the issues of greatest importance to our membership, but also the strategic priorities of the organization.
Right. I kind of characterize it as, what do you want to be known for as an organization?
That's a great way to characterize it. We were talking about the ASE research that we did right before we jumped on, and all the things that I'm hearing you mention, Teri, and that laundry list are really echoing a lot of other folks' experience. I see some other folks are joining us online, so welcome. If you have any questions while Nancy, Teri, and I are talking, you can use the Ask a Question link at the bottom, or just pop in the comments like Scott just did. Scott Ozer saying hi to us, even though he's a couple minutes late. Hi, Scott. Thanks for joining us. So Nancy, another thing besides the what is everybody likes to hear the how. So I'm really interested to hear kind of how content strategy was pitched internally and how you made the case for it in ASIS.
Sure. I think Teri set up nicely the hot mess that we had going in the organization. And I think what we were able to do had to do with, I guess, really three things that I would say contributed to the success of the launch. One of those is that we kind of turned over every rock we could to find any data that we had, data on attendance, data on downloads, to really begin to think about what issues we were going to select to be part of our issues framework. So number one, that would be leverage your data. Number two, I think we really worked to create issues that also connected directly to the strategic plan. So harnessing the strategic plan or the strategic framework of your organization out of the gate really helps get the support of the board. And then the third thing, and Teri can take all the credit for this, is we built a really nice matrix team approach, because with the silos that we had, we sometimes didn't even know what other teams were doing with content. So we got everybody into one room and really figured out the process and the roles and how each group would be leveraged. And a tip around that would be, getting those Marcom people into the room early was really something that made a big difference.
Great. Nancy, could you just squish a little bit to your right? I want to make sure you get most of your face in the frame. I know we had some audio challenges earlier, audience, so they're actually sharing their screen here. When you're talking about, I just wanted you to amplify or expand a little bit, Nancy, on the team piece. You said getting Marcom on board, but were there any other comments you would say about how this cooperative approach impacted the way the teams work together there?
Well, I would say, and Teri will jump in, I'm sure. One thing helped a lot, and that was having sort of an objective project manager, because in any association there are politics and a little bit of jockeying around what issues are most important or process, and that person was able to just listen for process as we went along and really capture a process for us. And then what else would you say? I just think having the different lenses built the awareness that people needed to work differently going forward, not in isolation.
Right. And what we found out, and Nancy will get into this a little bit later about all the lessons that we learned, but that team started out really large. We wanted to involve all the stakeholders we could. Right. And we realized very quickly that some of those stakeholders, while completely on board with the process, were not necessary for daily work. So that team actually shrank a lot and became very manageable. And now we do a lot of reporting out to everyone, but the core content development and strategy team is much smaller than it was when we started.
Okay, that's great. Now, as with many organizations, associations, and nonprofits, the members are typically the subject matter experts, right? So, Teri, how are you navigating the whole, or I would say navigating the content creation process, and has it changed in the way you're kind of governing that with your volunteers?
It changed drastically. This is one of the biggest changes that we implemented, and we had to be strategic. We had to plan carefully because we have 36 councils.
Wow.
Right. Exactly. So, and they produce content on their own, and they serve as sources for content. So the way it used to work, and we'll do a little bit of status quo, but not much, is that these councils would independently produce content. They would turn it over to our internal editorial team, who would edit, produce, and print this material for councils on a first come, first served basis. So again, nothing strategic about that. But we had to find a way to empower these councils to do their own content and give them tools while we were simultaneously letting them know that we were going to focus on these other issues rather than producing content at a first,
on demand.
Yeah, on demand. So so what we did is we designed a portal that only they can access, and we have guidelines there to teach them what kind of content they can produce and what material should turn into what kind of content. We used to have a joke that it was white papers all the time because they didn't know what else to produce.
Right.
So now we have guidance on, well, maybe this is a tip sheet, maybe this is an ebook, so they have over a dozen tools to choose from. And then we have templates, so they can just cut and paste, and we give them instructions on how to post that in our communities and our connects, our online community for members. So what we found from that is that we have to keep communicating that. Right. So while we've had no negative feedback, people are embracing it, we still keep telling them it's there and how to use it. So that communication piece is important.
Yeah, and they still have that same affinity for white papers.
Yeah, we haven't solved that.
White papers, for God's sake. Yes.
I know. It's like the known thing, right? Okay, I'm going to pause for just 1 second here. Are there any specific questions from the folks that are online that you want me to address before we start to wrap up some of the questions that I had prepared? I'll give you a second to post in the chat or on Ask a Question.
Oh. Not even Scott has a question?
Shocking, I know.
Well,
okay, well, you guys can pop one on there if one comes up. I love that the idea that you have the governance in place. I'd like to hear any comments you have about any of the success measures that you put in place as part of this content strategy effort and how that's going.
Yeah, I think we were both going to take a crack at that. I would start just with this whole mindset shift of trying to work collectively as a team to leverage a topic area. really coordinating. A new standard comes out, and then we do a learning program on it, and we have an article in the magazine, and suddenly there's a landing page on that particular topic. So there's just efficiencies there and value that we're still trying to improve on, but I think it has changed somewhat with that awareness. And I think the second measure of success would be around really getting the discipline to not do everything. So instead of reacting to all these volunteers who want us to, we're able to say, here's your channel, and here's where we're going to be very purposeful. So sunsetting things, or maybe not treating everything with the same level of value.
Right.
And then, of course, there's the revenue piece. What do you want to say?
We all love that. We all love the revenue piece. I think that goes to creating this machine. So once we have our topics and our landing page and we've done work on it, it becomes easier then to build in revenue generating pieces. We can sell an ebook. We can do an e-learning bundle, which is a brand new product that we've developed that we sell through our LMS. So I think as time goes on and we're adding, not creating from scratch, I think that revenue piece starts to take off.
Okay.
Right.
Great. Okay. We're getting close to the end of our time. I warned you it was going to go a little quickly. So any last things you want to leave folks? Oh, wait, I see one question in here I'm going to address first. Scott does have a question. So he really likes the idea of taking the multi-focus approach to topics and how to repurpose strategy from the beginning. Does that result in a lot of internal meetings to get everyone on the same page? So how do you manage that?
Well, I think my observation would be that we, again, tried to lay a lot of groundwork up front. And I'm sure some on our broader team here would say, yeah, that was a lot of meetings. And there were some who said, why am I in this conversation at all? But I think once we had that awareness built, we did a very clever presentation at an all-staff meeting about, what's in, what's out around content. And that has largely contributed, I think, to people supporting this. But then as we got more nimble and better at making decisions, we were able to narrow that team down.
Right. And that nimble team, I think, is very important, because you just have to, there's a point at which you have to create. And that is much easier with a smaller team.
Right. Okay.
So buy in first, and then think about execution as being the more important of the two priorities.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Well, that's a really great takeaway, which leads to my final question. Any advice that you would leave with the folks that are watching now or maybe watching later that are pursuing this similar kind of project?
I would probably give a couple of quick tips. One is, if you're taking on this voluminous and multifaceted project that's content in your organization, try to find an early win. So in our case, there are a lot of technical topics around security. There's a broad range of very deep knowledge and expertise, but we picked leadership and management as our first early win because it was something that's largely understood, that we had content existing already, and we were able to get that up and running so people could see exactly what it is we're trying to do and what the result looks like.
Absolutely. And I would say the process is slow. Don't get discouraged. I think Nancy and I share a similar personality trait, which is to run really fast. And you have to just be patient, and things take time, and you're going to have hiccups. But just be nimble and evolve, and you'll get there.
Yep. And the third thing would be communicate, because we can't believe that other people forget that we have these great tools and resources. And
Seriously.
It's like, oh my gosh, they're right there. But
Right.
shockingly, it's not everyone's first priority. So
And don't take it personally.
Right. Excellent. Those are all super great tips. And again, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to share them with us here at Content Forum today. I'd love, as a follow-up, if you guys would maybe be willing to share to the community some of these guideline documents that you talked about earlier. and in turn, to let you know, because I know you guys are looking for models and samples too, just like other folks in Content Forum, I'm starting a series of member profile interviews for the forum, and I'll be asking people to start sharing those takeaways more specifically. Also, with my hat on for ASA's Communication Professionals Council, if you're willing to share it as models and samples for the ASAE website, I'd be happy to be that bridge to do that too. So again, thanks so much for taking the time and sharing this information with us today.
It was our pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. And folks online, thanks very much for joining us. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.